Hello and welcome back to Lowestoft Town Council Watch. In the last episode, we generated quite a lot of comments on Facebook. It was quite interesting because we were talking about secrecy and what is allowed to be confidential and what's not. And what was missed back in February 2024 was an extraordinary council meeting where some really interesting things happened. But the process of the interesting things was actually moved into confidential. And the really weird thing is, if you watch Councillor Wendy Brooks, she didn't know why it was going into confidential and why things had to be done. But the answer was intriguing. Just have a look at this first.
Item 181, to consider interim staffing arrangements. This is confidential, including the following. And we've got two parts to 181.1 and point 2. So that'll go.
But you need to do it, sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
For a governance point of view, you need to do it at this stage in the meeting.
Yeah.
So we do need to close Lauren temporarily, if you can make arrangements.
Okay. So
that.
I need to do that bit, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going.
It will be only an interim closure. So.
Okay. We've got an interim closure. So if we look down to the bottom there, 188, this is confidential, but only for an interim. To resolve that under the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, namely any legal and employment issues relating to the matters on this agenda, including the following. Because we're looking at staffing matters, it's confidential. Sorry, Councillor Brooks.
No, I've got a question.
Yeah.
I'd like to know why we're doing it now, because we usually move these things to the end of the agenda. So we're not, sorry, Neil, I'm asking the staff. All right. Why is it? It's unusual practice. I would like it explained so that I understand and the public understand why a confidential item is, we haven't moved it to the end. That's all I'm asking, just for clarification.
The confidential item that needs to be considered needs to be done at this stage in the meeting to make sure the council can be compliant with other business that it needs to deal with this evening.
Yeah. Okay. So having read that, can I have a proposer? Councillor Pearce and a seconder, Councillor Brooks, and a vote, please, so we can go into confidential session. Thank you. That's unanimous. So can you flag up when you...
Okay, so the captions come up and the YouTube feed has been silenced because they're in confidential setting to discuss something. And the something is a staffing matter. You might have noticed the caption I put up was what was in the minutes of that meeting back in February. Sarah Foote was described there as Deputy Town Clerk. And that's how she started the meeting. Now, what actually happened in the very long time that that caption was up was that the staff were asked to leave the room, which they did, and then the councillors in their confidential setting decided that Sarah Foote was now going to be the acting town clerk, the title she currently has. So she started as deputy, and when the meeting recommenced, she's actually the acting town clerk. They didn't bother to explain this to the people at home. To all intents and purposes, the meeting just carried on, but with a very important change of status, because the acting town clerk is also the responsible officer for the council. So it's a very different job. It bears considerable responsibility. And at that moment, it would appear that Shona Bendix, who was the town clerk, is no longer in charge and presumably not about. And she hasn't been about since then, from what I can discover. And the acting town clerk took over. And that's what the minutes say. Oddly, in the meeting that the members of the public watch, this was all sort of hidden away, which is a bit odd, isn't it? Anyway, it carried on like this.
No, right. Well, just to welcome everybody back who you're watching on YouTube, we're now back online, and this is the Lowestoft Town Council Extraordinary Full Council meeting. To consider the 2024-25 budget and precept. Some aspects may be confidential.
And with that, they were back into normal session. And the fact that a big change of power had just taken place in the council was completely missed. I mean, nobody explained that, we've just had a little session. And by the way, Sarah Foote, who was the deputy, is now the acting town clerk. They didn't mention it at all. I just find it really amazing that when you suddenly change someone's responsibility like that, you don't tell anybody and you just bury it away in the minutes. It took a while for me to find it. The minutes say they went into secret session. The council staff were asked to leave. Sarah Foote was promoted from being deputy town clerk to acting town clerk with the responsibility that that position entails. And then they went back into public session and carried on as if nothing at all had happened. How bizarre. If things like that are sort of done in secret and the only way you find out important things is to actually go and study the minutes, that's not really very transparent, is it? And as far as I can determine from what I can see and read, the subject was never mentioned. That's the meeting at which Sarah was suddenly promoted, and yet nobody actually mentions it as something, oh, by the way, she's no longer deputy, she's the acting town clerk. She's the boss. It's just really weird. But I guess that's how our council like to operate. Don't actually tell us members of the public anything at all. Wendy did point out on Facebook the other day that, if you want to find things out, you can always put a freedom of information request in. I found that a bit bizarre that a councillor would say, look, we're not going to tell you, but if you put a request in, we'll probably tell you. Why not just make it public? What's the point of a YouTube meeting if you're going to keep things secret? But then you can actually find the information out. If they want freedom of information requests, well, I guess we can do that, can't we? But it's a bit time consuming and probably a bit pointless. Anyway, this might well be the last meeting that I can comment on for a while. I've got so many things this week coming. We're moving to pantomime time. Pantomime time, that's a laugh, isn't it? I'll be going from Lowestoft Town Council to pantomime. Probably won't notice the difference. Anyway, you all look after yourselves. Keep safe. Bye.